Hello and welcome to HolisticCircle podcast, Spiritual Conversation. My name is Philipp Kobald. We are reaching out to people who are passionate about spreading light, love, and joy and give comfort. And I'm happy to have here today with me from England, David Jones. Hello, David.
Hello, thank you for having me this morning. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Well, me too, to be honest. It's quite since we had our first conversation, a lot of things start shifting around, and obviously the universe provides in its own time frame. So I see that something has been broken loose. So I'm looking forward for this conversation and tying things up. All right, we always start by inviting my guests to give a small self-introduction, some small background, whatever comes to your mind, so people a little bit get to know you, who you are, and where you come from.
Lovely. So my name's David. I'm from Dudley, a little town in England, and I've just opened my own life coaching and holistic healing business. And alongside that, I'm also an author, a tutor at a college, and I'm also a soul doula, which I think we're going to be discussing a little bit more about today, aren't we, Philip?
I hope so. That's
Yes.
why we're here. Of course, we will look at many things that you do, but that is the main subject, because I guess the way I understand spirituality, there are a couple of key moments where we really do need any kind of spiritual guidance, spiritual counsel, or just somebody holding space. And that, I guess, is the prime element of any spiritual search or any spiritual drama that's unfolding in people's life. So, but we'll ease in, and starting with just a little bit, you said you do many things. It's like a big portfolio that you already have. You said, I'm starting, but you already have a very vast portfolio and it's working out well. What would you like to a little bit ease in? I like the educational part, the things that you're working with. Can you a little bit maybe tell us about that work?
Okay, so I'll just give a little context to kind of how I've arrived where I am. So I wasn't always like this. In my younger days, I was a bit of a party animal. I was a little bit of out of control. I was into drink, drugs, any addictions kind of going, you name it. And it wasn't until I had this very profound experience from my best friend who had grown up alongside me, and he had cystic fibrosis, and he had a lung transplant, and everything went fantastically well. I had the privilege of being his best man at his wedding. But the following year, my friend contracted pneumonia and bronchitis, and because of the lung transplant, you don't necessarily have an immune system, because you have to have immune system blockers to block your immune system, or else the body would reject the foreign organ. It's a bit of a paradox, but that's what it is. But that's because Dean didn't have an immune system as such. His body just simply couldn't cope with the bronchitis and pneumonia. And I had the great honour and privilege of being beside him as he took his last breaths in the hospital room. And that was my first real experience with death as such, being next to someone, especially one of my friends in that situation. And I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't prepared. I don't think you are. But we all left the room, his family, his wife, myself, and then I asked his family, can I just go back in and be with Dean just for 10 minutes to express my gratitude for being such a wonderful, positive role model in my life, for never trying to fix me, for never telling me I was out of control, for never telling me my drug use was out of control, that my drink. He just literally loved me and accepted me for who I was, and would literally scrape me out of the gutter physically and metaphorically every time. So I was in the room with him, just me and this shell of what was my best friend, and I was looking at him, and I just thought, there's no way your constant positivity and love and just such friendship, that can't just be what is in this body. It can't be confined to that shell. And I was looking through his body, and I started to literally see through the veil of this physical reality, and that all those lessons he taught me and showed me through love, they can't just be for nothing. They can't just rot away to dust. And in that moment, something very profound started to happen within me. I started to experience, the only way I can describe it is true unconditional love and bliss and joy. And I just felt such awe and love coming from within me, but it was also surrounding me as well. And there was light in the room, and I was just hugging his corpse, his body. kissing it, loving it. And I just felt for the first time I touched this pure, divine, unconditional love, because we place so many conditions upon love, don't we, as humans? This was the first time I'd felt this for anyone. And it was a very confusing feeling, because I didn't expect I should be feeling like that beside the corpse of my dead best friend. So needless to say, I left the room that day a different person. It was literally like the veil had been lifted, and I wanted to know more about why we're here. What is our purpose? It can't just all be one big cosmic accident. What is my purpose? Who am I? And this started opening doors, unraveling layers to who I am. I started to learn about human development, human psychology. Why did I have such an addictive personality? And then piecing it all together, I then started to learn about how the first 7 years are key to the development of our subconscious mind and our ego structure, to the way we view the world. And when I was 3 years old, my mother just left one day, just left me and my father. And I didn't realise what a profound impact that had on that little boy, with his mother leaving him. But that wasn't the actual traumatic event. The trauma then occurred from the story that little boy, that little Dave, told himself that his mum left. So that little boy told himself he wasn't good enough. He wasn't worthy of love. He didn't deserve love. He had no purpose. And then can you see, with that subconscious belief that's generating those daily emotions with him, that's what then drove me and my addict lifestyle as an adult, because we're all just essentially little children in adult bodies playing out the stuff we learnt when we were younger. And so I just did every addiction possible to bring me temporary moments of solace and dopamine and joy. But of course they subside, don't they? They fade. And this is why I tried every addiction going, and it works for a little bit of time, but eventually you can't, it's not sustainable, and you have to look for something more deeply with him. So then this led me to a new path, self-discovery. All these doors started opening. I then wrote my book that I got told to write when I was meditating one day. A voice just said, write a book. I never wanted to write a book ever. I never read a book since college in about 20 years, but do you know what? I just followed that voice, that guidance. I picked up a pad and wrote some outlines for chapters, and then I would meditate each morning and just type this book, and this book flowed effortlessly out of me. New job opportunities started to come to me. That's when I got into education and lecturing and helping young adults with autism and challenging behaviour, teaching them life skills, how to cook, how to live independently. And it just kept unfolding. And then I met a woman that trained me to be a soul doula, which is what we'll discuss more about. And then recently, I now want to give all my gifts back to what I've learned to people, and I open my own life coaching and holistic healing business. So that's a very condensed version of how I've arrived at this point today, sat with you. So thank you.
Well, I always like to start the podcast light and leave the hard stuff for later.
I mean, that's the PG version I've just given you, but yes, it's all good.
All right, thank you. I think I'll take it then. It is fascinating that the great many people who end up in healing and spirituality have gone to things very similar to what you've gone through in one way or the other. That it's very rare, basically, to have guests who just, coming from moon and sunshine and love and flowers, and then decide to do inner work and then to go all the way with spirituality. It's a rare case. But so this, I guess, if you went through your own healing, you know very well to help others, and especially you very well know how to call out bullshit if you see it. And that's one of the great advantages of going through such a journey of yours, being where you are. So, but let us, two things a little bit, we need to lighten the load. One thing is, tell us about the book. How was it received? What is the message of the book, or what is the purpose of the book, and what happened with the book?
Okay, yeah, the book. So as I said earlier, I wrote that, just it effortlessly flowed out of me. It was very cathartic. People that reviewed it, and in hindsight, had described it as a spiritual memoir. And I suppose how it was kind of, I was documenting my awakening as it was happening to me. The life I've come from, and there was this completely new world out there that's always been there, but you don't know what you don't know, do you? So yeah, the book, I mean, it still continues to sell now, and I've had people from all over the world contact me through Instagram that have read it, and I've made so many beautiful contacts through meditation apps that have read it on there, and it's been really well received because I tried to be just as authentic as I could in it and share as much as I could with protecting the identity and respecting others. But yeah, I just bared my soul in there. So the first half of the book was about my life, from my very first memories of my mum and dad arguing violently to kind of the day when my book was released. So all of what I learned. And then the second half of the book was the kind of spiritual lessons that I'd learned about that then in hindsight, I can see that how that applies to my life. I can see how karmic patterns applied to me. I can see how I did create my reality with my thoughts and my beliefs about the world. And then that was then mirrored back to me when I was homeless, when I was an addict, when I was in debt. Of course, that's quite the opposite now. I didn't get lucky. I just changed my subconscious beliefs. And this is now then mirrored back to me. So this is what I try to tell people to do. So yeah, it's a book of two halves. But I suppose it's just using the first half to say, look, this is why this happened. But not condemning it, just to say this is why this had to happen in order for me to arrive to where I am now. So I don't regret a thing in my past. Obviously, I don't enjoy that I hurt people along the way. But at the same time, it had to happen for me to learn about myself and who and what I am. So yeah, that's my book, yeah.
There is some kind of hot subject these days on the podcast. And there seems to be some kind of a split. I mean, it's not like 100% left or right, but along the line, I'm exaggerating, is somewhere that there is, a super all-seeing being, some kind of God, whatnot, however you call it, and he pretty much lays out a plan, like a map, or things have to happen, or things happen for a reason, and all of this thought of streamlines. And basically, I even went that far that I interviewed a spiritual healer who receives divine messages, and so many clients coming to her. And sometimes the message says, heal her, and she's the vessel for the healing, and the healing is actually happening. While sometimes the message is, this is supposed to happen to her, the sickness, and you can't heal her. So this is a very interesting structure. And at the other side, you have the people who would totally reject any of these thoughts. They believe in the divine, they believe in the energy, but it's somewhat neutral. It somewhat doesn't have a purpose of like a structure, purpose or plan or layout. It's more like an all-loving energy, and we can, for our own will, connect with it, profit from the divine energy if we connect with it. But basically, it doesn't have an agenda, so to say. I would very much love to hear your thoughts on this hot topic.
Wow, that's a heavy one, isn't it? So,
well, you start. I like.
No, look,
I can follow.
Yeah. Again, all I can talk about is just my experience, and I learned all these intellectual concepts, but until I actually experienced them, that's when the penny dropped. And I've had some very profound experiences that I can't explain, and that the old addict or football hooligan that I used to be as well, if he saw me now, he would laugh at me and ridicule me, because that's where he was, but this is where I am now. So I would just say from my experience that, it's a great question, that we are just all one being. I've found that to be a core truth. I've experienced that. And I believe through my experience that we are this one being that's just becoming self-aware of itself through an infinite number of reflections. And when you start to learn this principle, you can then see how people bounce off one another and why you attract certain people that mirror unconscious shadow behaviours to yourself. But we've been learning in our humanity for the past 200,000 years to point the finger. It's always out there. But I would say from a higher perspective, and this is what I've experienced again, that I have a soul as such, if you want to call it, and that my soul needed to work out stuff and planned a path for me. When you're standing at the top of the mountain, it's far easier to see what's going on down below. And if you could birth yourself into a certain set of parents with culture, race, whatever, you can then see how that person that's going to be born into that family line is going to be programmed. It's going to have subconscious neurological patterning into it. It's then going to have certain unconscious behaviors that it's going to act, which are then going to bring about then results to help it learn and become self-aware. So to some degree, this brings in the notion of free will as such. Sometimes I believe we don't have free will until you become conscious, because we just act on autopilot based on our subconscious programming, past traumas, and that is no free will as such, because you're reacting without observing. And I believe you can slowly break that chain to then have more free will. It's a very deep paradox-laid question, but I would just say we're one being learning about itself. And that through emotions, we can learn who and what we are, about beliefs we hold about ourselves. And that love is the only infinite reality there is, which could be steeped in nothingness, but nothing is still something. Yeah. And I found the more I unravel and let go of erroneous thought patterns and old emotions, I'm slowly bearing more on a day-to-day basis now that feeling I experienced next to my dead best friend's body, which is pure love that is beneath all of us. It's just scrubbing the layers that are masking that beauty and pure divine presence. Words can't do it justice, really. Words are lies, but that's how I feel. And I feel that I am slowly becoming unconditional love. I've still got my moments, that ego's still there, but I'm just allowing the emotions as guidance system to them. Right, I still need to heal this. I need to let go of that pattern, change that, because it's clouding my perception of this person. And I can't see that person sat in front of me as the pure divine being as they are, because I still have a cloudy mirror about myself as such. Does any of that resonate with you?
It resonates with me in the sense that I think the UK government would be well advised to make you the next ambassador to Washington. I think you're ready to go. First of all, very diplomatic. Secondly, you see light in darkness.
You can't see the light without the darkness. You have to have it, and you will only find yourself in the darkness. You can't buy.
That's what I'm saying.
I've been down that road as well, trying to bypass it when I first awoke, and it doesn't. Yeah, it's very unhealthy. It's about forming a healthy ego structure to embody that love and divinity. Right. But yeah, thank you for your words. Thank you.
Let's pass it on to number 10.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the next career step.
Maybe.
Sounds like to me. Anyway, so let's now you work specifically with did you choose to work with autistic kids and kids like this, or it found you, or you choose it, or where this comes into this triangle of things happening right now around you? Where how does this fit in?
Yeah, so the first part of my life I was a chef, kind of the old Dave, and then after my awakening as such, I saw that I wasn't bound to just being a chef, that I could be anything I wanted to be, that I didn't need qualifications as such, and that's the conditioning in the world, that I could only be something with a qualification. That's not true. And then I remember stating one day that to the universe, literally, that I'd love to teach cooking. And then that gave me, about 6 months later, a job came about at a college to manage a cafe there. And I was successful in starting to manage that cafe. But part of the role of that cafe was to have students in, because it was like an enterprise, for these young adults to come in and gain work experience. And I just loved working with them. So literally, I didn't realise I was going to be working with them. But it was just like, oh my God, like something, again, I follow this now and I line the mind. I don't totally disregard the mind, but I try and bring them both into balance. But something was singing to me like, this is beautiful. I love working with these young people. They're actually teaching me about myself too. And I'm seeing such transformation in them that they can contribute back to society and that they never thought that they could. So this then moved me into the teaching role of working with this. So I left cooking altogether, and that's when I moved into life skills and teaching them independence. So I left the cooking days completely behind me, the professional cookery, and just worked with these young adults. And that's, so you could say we found one another, because they still continue to teach me to this day. I love it. It's a beautiful job, and they're very inspiring young people. And you know what I love about them the most? That they tell the truth. They don't hide their innermost feelings. They say it how it is. And I love that, because I was raised with a lot of pretenses to never say how I was feeling, to just say, yes, I'm fine, and put on a happy face. But this is all nice to make society tick by, but it's not always the healthiest, as I've learned. So I've got a lot of respect for the young people I work with.
These are now mainly handicapped young people. Is that the main puncture, or is just one part of it?
I have many different, there's autism, ADHD. I'm not a fan of labels, to be honest with you, and I've had this conversation with my students, and there is a time and a place for it. But sometimes I don't like it when a student becomes disempowered by their label. I understand they have to have it because of the medication and the EHCP plan. I get that. But at the same time, they can be anything. I truly believe this, and I don't want a label to stop them breaking through those barriers. But it has a time and a place. Yeah, I work with many young people with all walks of life and labels as such, yes.
In a setting of a school, or just give me one more second, just a bit more picture the whole place.
It's a college. It's a charity-run college. It's based on the principles of Rudolf Steiner. If you've ever familiar with him, some interesting content.
I'm Austrian,
and we learn about learning through the hand, and again taking them back to the re-stepping process in the first 7 years of their life. And this is how children learn, through using all parts of the hand, the will, the heart, which is the palm. This is why children love running around the garden like a teddy bear, because you're literally stimulating the heart connection. And then you have the intelligence, which is the fingertips. So we aim to incorporate through our crafts, because we do glass blowing, bronze casting, weaving, farm work, real manual hands-based crafts, to get the students using all of their hand, so they can trust the material, which will then hopefully help them rebuild their trust with the relationship with the world, and then can contribute to society. Because the way the education system has been geared up, it is changing now, it's changing rapidly. But their trust has been broken in the outside world because their needs haven't been met because of very rigid systems. So that's very brief what we do. But yeah, it's a charity-run college, and it's a beautiful place.
So I don't need to ask you the whole concept of discipline versus individuality. I guess it's pretty clear where you stand on that line.
Yeah.
But do you think personally, with your time and your mother left and all of this, that a more of individuality versus a more of structure and discipline would have maybe avoided some of the paths you've taken, or you think it was written anyway on the wall, and either way things would have unfolded?
Again, we're going back to kind of pre-birth planning in a way, and I do think to some extent my soul as such had a rough idea as to what my human self would take with the trauma, with the ancestral stuff that was being programmed into me. Again, this is proven that we've got stuff wired into us going generations back, certain patterns, phobias, fears. I believe the path I walked was perfect to enable me to arrive to where I am today, which then allows that empathy and allowing others to give themselves the space to heal themselves. That's all I'm doing. I'm not healing them. I'm just giving them concepts, tools, so they can then apply that and heal themselves. Yeah. So I believe it's all perfect. It is all divine.
Right. Thank you so much, because you gave the perfect answer to open out the chapter why we're here. It was some kind of like sneaky way in, because in a sense you answered the question that we've been now deliberating for the next 20 minutes or so. So tell us please about that element of your work that I'm keenly interested, because I think it accumulates all spiritual activities.
Is that my Soul Doula work you're referring to? Yes.
Yeah.
So when I was a chef, I worked in numerous care homes, cooking for the elderly and vulnerable young people again. And one thing that never sat right with me, and this is no criticism of anyone, but I would see relatives literally being brought to homes and dropped off, and that's it. Their relatives would never see them again, would never visit them again, and they were literally left there to die. And again, this isn't a criticism of anyone for whatever reason that happened, but that didn't sit right with me. Someone just sitting alone, dying on their own, when really it's each moment of life is to be cherished. Just sat here with you now, it's all perfect and wonderful. But some religions or teachings would say we're living for death, so to speak, that death is the most important part of your life, because how you meet that moment is then how you will transition. So how much truth is behind this, I don't know. I can only speak from experience. I would say if we can remain as conscious as we are in this present moment, that is how you will be in your death. They say how you live your life is how you will die, essentially. Because if you're not good, if you're constantly being torn around by the brain, being bullied by the mind, then how are you going to meet your death? There's going to be a lot of fear. There's going to be a lot of anxiety. Are you clinging to the material world? Some teachings would then say that would affect your next round, but I'm not into that today. I don't know. But so sitting with these people in the care homes, because although I was a chef, I would still sit with them and get lots of time to be out in the kitchen and get to know my residents. And I didn't like the idea of them dying on their own. That one of their most important moments, the most important moment of their life as such. So after my awakening, I went to a festival one day, like a soul festival, locally near me, a beautiful setting. And there was lots of talks, inspiring talks that day. And we went to this one room for a talk and it was full. We couldn't get in. So then I found myself in another room with this other talk that I hadn't planned to go to. Anyway, the woman that was doing the talk in there said she was a soul doula, and just the speech she gave and what she spoke about, the work she did, it just hit home here again. That heart, that resonance, and the work she did with the dying and raising education and awareness in the local community about it as well. And I just thought, you know what, this is something I want to do. I didn't have a chance to speak to her after the talk because she was so busy with people approaching her. So I messaged her on the night. She gave me information about her course that she was training people to be a soul doula, which I will give the full explanation of what that is in a moment. And I thought I'd love to do that. But then the price of the course, I didn't currently have the funds. And I thought, oh, you know what? It's not meant to be. However, literally within 2 days, I had the money literally dropped to me out of various tax rebate sources. It just happened. It was meant to be this large amount of money. So did the course, 6-month course. It was so transformational for me personally. I thought I was just going to learn about death and dying, but it just helped me understand my relationship with life and who I was. And then that gave me the confidence to go out and speak publicly about what I'm doing. To be sat here today as well with you, I wouldn't be able to do this 2 years ago. And so a soul doula, there are many different terms. There are death doulas, there are soul midwives. They've all got slightly different variations as to what they do. But a soul doula, what I do, I'm there to provide holistic, emotional and spiritual support to people on their end of life paths and for the family around. I can help them cross over in a transition if they want, but I haven't been asked to do that as such yet, although there is one story, if you remind me after, I'll tell you about. But it's really just to empower the dying person. And I took an oath of spiritual equality as well, that whatever that person believes spiritually, even if they're atheist or whatever, I'm to honour that and facilitate the most empowering death to them possible. Nothing is off limits. And the dying journey can go on for many, many years because we learnt to work with the elements of the body. So earth, water, fire and air. And when these start to leave the body, it's not a black and white guidance system, but it does give you a rough structure as to where they are on the dying journey. There's no set structure, but it can give you rough guidance. And yeah, when the earth element starts to leave, this can go on for many years. People can be actively dying for 10 years, generally growing old when their physical body starts to deteriorate. Then you've got the water element, which is when people might change. They might start to become emotional. They might start to lose control of their urine functions, going to the toilet, because that sacral chakra, the water element, is slowly shutting down. Their tastes in food might change as well. This is very common in people in their dying journey. We have the fire element, which usually happens in the very, very later stages of the dying journey. Again, this isn't a set structure, it's a brief guidance system, but it's useful to know. And this is where people can become very agitated. They might start having old guilt, anger come up that they've kept a lid on for all their life. And I suppose it's their way of letting it free, making peace with it. Some can become very aggressive as well. You might get confessions. And then we have the air element, which is, of course, that can last from 1 to 2 days, the very last moment when the air element is the last to leave their body, and they take that longest breath out and we don't take it again. So they say the longest breaths we take is the first one in when we're born, taking life in, and then when we leave the body, that's it. The air element becomes more and more sporadic. My journey as a soul doula is just to work with people all through these stages. And I've actually sat through very few deaths, to be honest with you, even in my family, because a very common trait of the dying is you can have family sat by their loved ones who are dying for days and days and days. And then literally they will go out to take a breath of fresh air, go to the toilet, and their loved one leaves, because that's the bond of love. And I do believe we actively choose when we're going to die, when we choose to leave the body. And we want to do it on our own because that act of love is so powerful and bonding. It's what glues us all together, the energy of the universe as such. People do choose to do that. So I'd say anyone to watching this, a lot of people I have coming to me saying, I feel guilty because I wasn't there for my loved one's last breaths. Sometimes you're not meant to be. You're not meant to be, and there's nothing to be guilty. My granddad left his body 2 months ago, and I had the profound and joyful experience of guiding him through his dying journey and having conversations I would never, ever have had with him, because I had to have that conversation that, Grandad, you're going to die one day. And fear stopped me from having that conversation with him. But I chose to follow my heart. And I said to him, Grandad, one day, I said, how do you feel about talking about death, Grandad? And he was very open. His body language changed. It opened. This was about 2 years ago. And we had this most cathartic, beautiful relationship where he started to explain to me about his life and how he viewed death. And we started doing these breathing practices. He even had some Reiki from me. My granddad was born just at the end of World War II. This is an old school guy, but he was just very open. And had I not have put fear aside and had that conversation with love, I would have never known parts of my granddads. We would never have spoken about that. And we wrote his end of life plan, what he wanted for his end of life. It doesn't always go that way, but I was able to facilitate, I'd probably say about 60% of it. And I even had the pleasure of leading his funeral. I conducted his funeral service a few months ago in February, and that was beautiful. And I was with him in the morning. I think I left the hospital about 1 o'clock. And then I got the call from my auntie about 4 o'clock that he had left his body. And immediately that ego, that spiritual ego part of me that says, oh, you should have been there. You're a soul doula. You should have been there for his last breath. So I've just acknowledged that voice. That's what the ego does. And I was fine out, let it pass. I then went back to my granddad's body, just me and him. The rest of the family had left. And I did facilitate his last wishes. And he wanted a book of the Bible read to him, a specific book. So I honoured that. I believed he could still hear me. He was still there. And I just sat with his body, blessing it, loving it, read him this passage from the Bible. He's a very religious man. I'm personally not now, but I respect his wishes. And it was a beautiful book, and he made me cry, and it was just another beautiful moment. And this is the journey of a soul doula and what I do. I also do a lot of public speaking because it's my passion to bring death out the closet as such, because in our Western society, I feel we don't talk about it much. It's shrouded in fear. And I feel the more we can plan for it and make preparations for it and talk about how we feel, I feel it can lessen that fear, which then, again, leading back to the present moment, might make that experience of death a more present, empowering, loving experience. And one of the main things we learned on our Soul Doula course was to prepare ourselves nurture ourselves, look after ourselves, fill our cups, because working with dying energy can be very draining. And if you don't have the necessary self-care tools in place, it can burn you out. You can hit burnout. So this is why it's so important to put yourself first in life to some degree, which then makes you more of a loving vessel to serve others. And just to be completely comfortable with the energy of death, because the dying, when you walk into that room, they will pick up on your energy. They will pick up on exactly what is going on in your day. So that's why I have to be as clear as I can to just hold the space in pure love, and there's no stuff there blocking. And if that person wants to talk to me, express any fears, I'm not going to get sucked up or swallowed by it. I'm just there to help them listen, facilitate an empowering and loving death as I can. So that is what I do. And yeah, I love it. Currently, I don't have the time to be doing as much in-person work at the moment. I'm doing a lot of deaf cafes in the public. So this is where I'll just get a cafe space and we'll just have tea, cake, coffee, and people don't have these spaces, and we just talk about death, how people feel about it. And it's been so cathartic whenever I've done them, because people don't have these opportunities to talk about death. I do a lot of public speaking. I encourage people to write their end of life plans and to get their wills done, because in the UK, statistics vary, but the last time I checked, it was about 60% of the adult population don't have a will. If you can have a will in place and an end of life plan in place, it's such a gift to your family when they're in raw times of grief, and splits can happen in family. It can throw up emotional turbulence. If you have left your wishes there in black and white, it's very hard to argue with the wishes of a dead or dying person. And it's a real gift, and it empowers the family and yourself as well. So this is why I encourage people, please do your wills, write end of life plans, write all your passwords down, write all your wishes, write what you want. And it's such a help for people in times of grief. So this is the whole aspect of the Soul Doula. So I talked a lot, but yes, so thank you for listening. That's what I do.
Write your passwords down should be top of the list.
Yes, especially with day and age with the social media and everything, yeah.
I've been through it last year, and I can tell you, my friend, this is a whole new world is coming towards us with very active online users, and a lot of online ordering that is renewed, and subscriptions and stuff, and if you don't have the passwords, or if you don't have access to the mobile phones and things like that, basically it's still incredibly poorly organized for the people staying behind, dealing with these technicalities. I mean, this is not a spiritual conversation right now, but it can really hurt you a lot. You're in a moment of grief, you're in a moment of working through stuff and whatnot, and you spend your whole day on hotlines, and you receive sympathetic people, and they cut the lines and make it happen. Or you meet a lot of people who are just basically, you have to go through A, B, C, and like, I don't have a mobile phone from the deceased, I can't go through B. Yeah. Well done, bad luck then. And you're in a moment of grief. So this is a very sensitive subject. And now that we more and more companies don't even have hotlines anymore, they have now robots answering your questions, while things, then you even get humiliated by a robot in the moment of grief. So it's a very touchy subject, I'll tell you that. But sorry, this is a little bit diversing. I actually wanted to ask you, again, a technical question. I'm so sorry for being boring after you shared such a deep and emotional speech. But first two questions I have. First of all, who is your client? Who is paying you? Is it a hospital, or is it the families of the person? Sorry, I'm interested in that part. And another one, is it in the UK? I have to be licensed. Did you have to go for the course to have a certificate to do this? Or could basically anyone from the street walk in and offer the services? And again, to whom? To hospitals, care homes, people, or how does this work?
Okay, yeah, good questions. So I don't charge currently for my services. I may one day, but I haven't actively sought people as such. People just find me. I just feel that connection and follow that soul calling again. But my plans in the future, as my business expands and I do have more free time, you can just go into care homes or hospices and volunteer your services. This is what the woman who trained me, she did hundreds of dying people she sat next to just for volunteering. So you can volunteer, you can go into hospitals if they would allow you. It's just finding out if the person in charge is comfortable, if you're going to volunteer yourselves. You can charge. There's no harm in charging for spiritual gifts. That's a lot of blocks I had to get by, because spiritual people shouldn't charge and all this, we should give everything away. But we're still here, as you mentioned, just dealing with the robotic voices and everything. We're still in the 3D world. It is still a spiritual experience. Everything is spiritual. Everything is God. It can't not be. So you can charge for your gifts if you want. That's okay. It's whatever feels comfortable for an individual. I would say people that sit with their family are soul doulas to some extent, their loved ones. It's just they don't know it. It's just having those tools, as I mentioned earlier, to cleanse yourself, to ground yourself, so you're not taking on the emotions. And I find a lot of people in the spiritual scene are empaths or empathic people that absorb all this stuff. And it's good to some degree because you can pick up on what's going on in the room, but it's not healthy because you've got no boundaries. So you need to learn those spiritual boundaries. So yeah, anyone, you can do it in hospices, wherever, friends, family, that's where I am. And I wouldn't say you have to be trained as such, but from a self-care aspect, the course I did was an accredited course, a 6-month course. I would say you need to do it really to have some sort of credibility and access point into organisations, and just for your own health, just so you're not hitting burnout. So I would really recommend trained and getting an accredited course, which then just gives you a nice label next to you so people can see who and what you do, that you do know what you're talking about. But anyone can sit with the dying. It's just about protecting yourself and not being emotionally invested. And I don't say that from a point of shutting yourself off. I'm all about love. But again, it's not absorbing the emotions to hit burnout. And so many people do it. So it's just about being able to hold that space in pure, unconditional love.
So let's recap a little bit before my last question is coming up slowly. So basically, the few elements, as you said, people may have regrets in that element, that things have not been said, things not being done, things not being lived. People also have fear coming maybe from these regrets, or related or unrelated. Fear of transition, that's a big subject, and I have God knows how many podcasts already with people who actually talk about angel seers, spiritual seers, light seers, who very specifically see these souls transitioning, and souls who don't make the transition. So I have like tons of podcasts already on that, people who work with these souls. So this is a fear of leaving, fear of letting go. That's the elements that are all around. But now basically the elephant in the room, because you said you're working with the people dying, but you also work with the families. So that will lead us to the next question. We all understand, I guess, the problems dying and what might be part of the journey, holding you back, or uncertainties, or all these things. But tell us a little bit about what's happening within the relatives, the families, the friends around, and what you can contribute with them.
Yeah, again, you can sit with people while relatives are in the room. But again, you're just that space for everybody in there, holding that space of love, not getting bombarded or sucked down by everything that's going on. It's also about empowering the relatives, letting them know what is actually legal when it comes to the funeral and planning, because in our country, in the UK, there's not actually that many legalities. I can't speak for any other countries. And I'm not criticising the death industry now, but people can get swept away by the mainstream death industry and end up spending lots of money that they don't necessarily have. It doesn't have to be that way. There are actually a lot of autonomy that people have to their own death and how they want to be buried. Or you can be buried in your own garden if you want to here, as long as it's not next to a running source. You can transport the corpse. Don't have to have a hearse. There are lots of options when you start digging beneath, again, what the mainstream says, and this isn't a criticism of anybody, but you can get swept away and you have to have this, you have to have that. There's only actually a few things you have to do. So it's just about informing relatives that they have the power. You can sit with the corpse for as long as you want. You can keep their corpse in your house if you wish. But a woman I did a lot of community work with started a movement in our community because she had such a negative experience of the way her mother's death was handled. And it was literally like the body was stripped away and she didn't have time to mourn with her or anything. And that doesn't have to be the case. It's just about educating people. Actually, you can sit with your loved ones. You can say bye to them without the deaf industry feeling like a conveyor belt and on to the next. And if you are having these things, you get like an hour slot for to a chapel, and then it's the next person in, and it's this conveyor belt of death. And I understand it has to be done and everyone is doing their best, but I just want to keep it as that humanity as much as possible and love and connection. So yeah, it's just being with the relatives, empowering them, sitting with them, not getting overloaded by their things, and just again being that space for the relatives as well, and encouraging them to just choose love.
Did you have this situation where relatives can't let go and dragging people along who actually would like to leave and like to move on, but relatives are kind of holding back? Is those kind of elements already crossed you? Are you part of these elements?
Do you mean they can't let go of the loved one? They can't accept their death?
And so they kind of force them to hang in there in a certain way. Are you part of these kind of conversations?
Yeah, again, this is just education because, as I mentioned the elements earlier, when a loved one is dying, well, the most loving thing to do if they're not eating is to feed somebody, isn't it? But really, because the earth element's going, if they're in their last days, very end stages, they don't need to eat. It's just education. Again, that's why people choose to stop eating. They just don't want to. But again, in the deaf industry, in our hospitals are a testament and shrine to life, aren't they? They do fantastic work. And each death is viewed as a failure in the eyes of someone where you're trying to preserve life. So I feel there's a lot of denial around death. And this is then transferred to families and relatives when doctors say, oh, yeah, they're looking up, when really, just be honest, say, look, this person is dying. They're not going to be here much longer. And it's just that transparency and education that, you know what, when someone chooses to stop eating, that they intrinsically know, they know on a soul level. It's not to deny that death. And I feel with denial comes suffering, doesn't it? This is the denial of everything. This is what creates the suffering in the mind, the clinging as well, the attachment to things. This is what creates the suffering. If you can just accept that death is a natural, beautiful part of life, there's no errors. It's not an error. The seasons are always dying around us each year. Everything's dying and reborn. It's that constant flux of change, which is the only guarantee in life. Then, yeah, again, I can understand why families do it. It's a tough one. And I just approach it with as much love and compassion as I can, to not deny how that person is feeling. I'm there to validate it as such, but just to help them see that this is a natural, healthy part of life, and to embrace the grieving process as well. It's healthy to, if you want to cry, if you want to scream, go for it. And there's no set rule book, oh, a year's passed, you should be feeling like this now, or 2 years passed, you should be healed. No, it just accept all the emotions as they come up. It's part of being human. It's part of this beautiful experience we find ourselves in, and to embrace it all.
So it might happen that you take a relative to the side and just go for her and tell her this is happening. You have to, let it happen, let it open up. You have to, be prepared and help the transition. That might be one of the conversations you might be having. And also I was wondering, because you said so many people just leave the old in the care home and never show up again. So are you also the person that might take a relative and said, you have to make space now, you have to make room now? And you would be missing out if you would now just running, after the next yoga retreat, just stop for a moment because that's happening. Make time. Would that also be something that you would be doing?
Only if a person asked me. I would never enforce my stuff. Again, that spiritual equality, I would never project upon anyone. I'm just there to hold the space with as much love and compassion as empathy as I can. If someone wanted to talk to me and really wanted my view on it, I would be honest with them, because again, telling the truth is the most loving thing you can do to anybody. But I would just honor each person's journey. And it's not like I can snap somebody out of the way they feel, and nor should I, because I believe all parts lead us to the grander puzzle, and we will all get where we need to be eventually. So it's just to hold that space and let it unfold as it needs to.
That's why it was so good decision for me 30 years ago, stop being a therapist, because I'm not like you. 100% not you.
I didn't know
It's
you
good that it's good that I do what I do. Good that you do what you do. Yes.
Some of the stuff I do now, with my clients, we think we're broken. We're not. We're whole and complete. And sometimes healing is just accepting who you are with all your neurosis and your stuff and honouring it. And
Right.
this is part of my dad. And I just accept that. If there are really detrimental, toxic behaviours or addictions you have, we can help reprogram and align those. But sometimes it's just accepting this is who I am. I'm a bit nuts, but that's okay.
I'm all about tough love. That's my straight in the face.
Yeah.
But all right, that's why I stopped. This, I think, is a insane conversation from so many levels that I don't know how to explain you why I think this is one of the most insane podcasts I've ever made, and most probably will ever make. Not because it's just the revolutionary news or it's the crazy exorcists talking about stuff that, or other Freemason coming here and this is all fun and games, but in a sense, what you do is the real deal, right? It can't be more real. It can't be more of a deal than, as you said, dying and helping people make the best possible transition. It's the accumulation of everything that has been done. And either you get, as you said, you get this right and you go further, or you get this wrong. And in the worst case, you're stuck in nowhere. Or basically you have not finished your lesson and might have to redo it, which is most probably fine as well. But nevertheless, it is the moment of spirituality where everything comes together. So the very last question, just a couple of minutes, I most probably can already see the answer you're going to give me, way too diplomatic. But just whatever comes to your mind, it's a light question in a sense. This is job that used to be done by priests, and we'd had a structure and we had a system in place and we had a lot of rules in place, and now it's been taken over by the industry. But nevertheless, this was a more formal world we used to live in just under 50 years ago. And all this formality has bad elements, but it also has a lot of good elements in a certain way. It was predictability. People were not leave at home. Neighbors came and brought foods, and there were rituals of burying much more alive. And all of this facilitated quite a lot. Last mess and all of these things that was spinning around to manage this transition and managed families' griefs and all of it. So the simple question is, are you the future in a secular world? Is this where we're going now? What comes to your mind on these open questions?
I would like to think so. The woman that trained me is the reason that she started this movement to create a soul doula path in the world, because the NHS where we are in England is so stretched. There's a nurse I know who would go from room to room and just pop her head around the corner to see if people are still alive, and then go to the next, and then she'd go back to the room and the person is dead, because they're so stretched with their resources and limited. The soul doula movement can hopefully eradicate this, that people can have humane deaths as such and have people by their side at least up until they're comfortable, because as I mentioned earlier, people leave on their own sometimes and that's how they want to, but just to have that people up in the final days forming that bond, that connection, which is what humanity is craving for. It's what we're based on, but we're so fragmented sometimes. So I do believe this soul doula movement And again, there are soul midwives, death doulas, they're all slightly different, but we're all trying to achieve the same thing. Just, to create that new movement and structure that everyone can have a beautiful and empowering death with as much love and connection as is possible. So that's our goal as the soul doula, just to be that loving presence for someone.
So to summarize it, sorry, it was a perfect ending, but I'm destroying it because I really want to be so clear. So you see that there is a transition happening, if you want it or not, from the hand out of priests and church, which is not having the role anymore it used to have. And now from the need, people like you are growing up and filling this gap that has been happening the last 20 or 30 years. Is this now the secular or the spiritual or the universe answer to a reality that priests are not doing their job anymore because nobody calls them up? Is this somewhere along the lines we should feel about that?
I believe anyone can do it. It all boils down to love, doesn't it? You don't have to have a title or a set of dogmatic, rigid rules attached to you to perform an act of love. That anyone can, and I believe by talking about death and raising awareness about death and the kind of stages that people experience through death as the elements leave, that then we can bring communities back to that connection and be supportive for everyone. If people want to have priests there or whatever, or from whatever religious beliefs they have, that's fine. But why can't we bring this back to the community so everyone can do it and that we don't need to reach elsewhere or phone someone? And knowing a soul doula in a family, can just keep it in the families or locally, or then training ourselves through education. Yeah, I believe that anyone can do this and should as well, because we're just there to create that connection. That's all the words I use a lot: to connection, love. It's all it boils down to. So yeah, times are definitely changing. Times are definitely changing from traditional methods as such, aren't they? I think everyone can appreciate that with the way the world is at the moment. And the more we talk about these things, it raises awareness, gives people another perspective, opportunity, which then creates a different future because we can take different actions.
Well, David, I have 100 more questions in mind, but we're coming to the end. And actually, maybe one day we continue a podcast, exactly picking it up right here, because so many questions now spinning from my head. But I'll leave it there. I think this was the podcast of the year, if it comes to my personal opinion, because what is more important than dying right? Or dying with love, most likely, of what you would.
That's what, there's no right way, but yeah, love, I like that. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I'm German, Must be done right. Then it's done with love.
I like that.
Nothing you can do about it.
Your shadow, yeah.
I'm actually Austrian, not German, what I'm saying here. I'll edit this out. David, thank you so very much for talking about an unimaginable life, an unimaginable story. And you blow me away that this is a thing that you do on top of the million things you do for free, that you take the time from your busy schedule, working as a therapist, working as a holistic healer. All the links to your direct one-on-ones and the works we'll be putting down there. And I think everybody got a great understanding that you're the go-to guy if soul things need to be fixed. So I'll wish you all the luck. And I guess if I'd be American, I would now have to say thank you for your service. It just fits. It just fits, honestly. Thank you so much for making the space for people making the transition, because by the end, healing one of them, you heal all of us, because I guess you and me agree we're all one organism. And with each and every soul, you help the transition. You help my soul and the soul of the viewers and your own soul and the soul of your loved ones. Everyone gets healed by the job that you're doing, and that you're willing to do it for free in your busy schedule to make time. This is, again, thank you so very much. Thank you.
And thank you for doing what you do.